So far, more than dozens of hundreds of people have been reportedly died in disaster in Turkey and Syria, which Turkey President called a disaster of the century. So could you please brief us what kind of humanitarian crisis over there, according to your understanding so far?
That's right. As you mentioned, tens of thousands of people have lost their lives. Many more people are injured. And of course, many more people have lost their homes, their shelters, the places where they live. So this has created an absolutely enormous humanitarian crisis, and one that will require a lot of support going forward for those people who have lost so much. For giving more support, well, what we do in those countries is we work with authorities to provide different kinds of assistance. But it can also be other things like what we call psychosocial support. So providing psychological support for people who have been impacted, helping them find their documentation or get new documentation if they've lost it. Working in education, eventually to try and set up with partners structures so that children can go back to school. Working with other partners in the health sector to try to manage the huge needs on the medical side.
Nino reported that survivors of earthquakes may face a secondary crisis or double crisis because the heavy snow or winter keep worsening the condition and make a more horrific situation. So the WHO also warned that before. In your opinion, what is most needed for humanitarian efforts and humanitarian supports at the moment?
Well, the most urgent areas geographically that need support, of course, are in the northwest of Syria. This is a non-government controlled area, but it's not just that part of the country. Of course, the aftershocks had an impact in towns and cities throughout the country. So that's where the most urgent needs are required in Syria. In Turkey, it's 10 or so impacted provinces. And those are provinces close to the border with Syria. These are also areas that host a large number of Syrian refugees. Remember that the war in Syria has been going on for around about 12 years and that many millions of people had crossed over the borders. So geographically, those are the two areas that need the most support.
In terms of the global efforts, we have seen, including China, there are a lot of countries have sent their rescue teams, non-governmental or governmental, and they have done a lot of works in those two countries as well as the border area. So we have know that the first batch of Chinese aids have arrived in Syria today, and it is expected to help with about 5,000 people. How do you evaluate the speed and response of China's efforts in helping with this crisis?
I do know that they've been participating in supporting Turkey and Syria, and it's very important that all international countries that have the means step in to support, both with the search and rescue side, but also with the humanitarian side. And what we're doing internationally is we're working at the moment with partners and with other governments to see what is the best way that we can put up structures to raise money, urgently needed funds, that we can then channel into the relief efforts to support those people who have been left devastated on the ground. And we'll hope that people in China will be generous and will provide to UNHCR and other organizations like ourselves, but also that governments and individuals around the world will be ready to step up and to help those people who so desperately need that help.
There are a lot of discussion about how Western sanctions on Syria makes the situation more challenging. And we also seen that Syrian Red Crescent chief recently called for lifting of the U.S. and Western sanctions on Syria to facilitate the relief efforts, as the earthquake-stricken country is in dire need of rescue equipment. So in your opinion, there are a lot of countries has joined this appeal. How do you view about this appeal? Do you support such kind of appeal?
So all we would say on this question is to repeat what's been said by Antonio Guterres, who's the Secretary General of the United Nations, and he has stressed very recently that it is important that any sanctions should not impact the provision of vitally needed humanitarian aid for people in Syria in particular. And we obviously very much support that UN position. For us, it's vitally important that aid gets into Syria and that aid gets into the northwest of Syria, wherever that comes from.